So like we said in our opening video, not only are we going to talk about sailing and the lifestyle, but kind of the process that we went through that got us to this point. And having watched a lot of videos and a lot of other channels of other people that are doing this as well, a lot of people have put out some really great information, and some videos I wish I had seen a little bit more of what they went through. But there are a lot of good ones out there, and of course through YouTube and Google and so forth, you can get a lot of information. But it's a lot of information. So sort of what we're doing is assuming that anybody that's watching this is newbies, that's interested in cruising and the liveaboard lifestyle. So we're sort of gearing our information to that. The boat buying process, and then the transition to liveaboard, it's not easy. It's definitely romanticized without a doubt, but to actually get through it, it takes a lot of work, and timing is everything. Paying attention to whatever's happening in your life as far as cues for that timing, stay in tune with that. Because, and I'll give you an example. We came really close to we were closing on a boat. We put the offer in, it was accepted, and then a couple things happened, and I just got the feeling that wasn't the right time, or it was the right boat. I really loved the boat, but who knows in hindsight. But nonetheless, we pulled out of that deal for various reasons. And then Hurricane Matthew hit, and it kind of hit that area where we were looking at the boat pretty hard, and I would have been a mess just wondering what was going on with the boat. So anyway, the hardest thing is finding the boat. But before you can find the boat, you need to know what you're looking for. And if you're a newbie, you see boats that you think are attractive. You see, maybe you've been to a boat show and you see the amenities on the inside of the boat, and you really don't have a lot of knowledge of what's going on for the workings of the boat. I mean, when you're a boat owner, you're not just a sailor and in the galley cooking, okay? You're going to be a plumber, an electrician, a mechanic, a rigger, a fiberglasser. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's going to come. It's just like owning a house, but the maintenance on it is even more, and it's expensive. But anyway, before we get too far ahead, and we're not going to talk about any of the inspection stuff. We're going to save that for what to look for when you've identified the boat and before you get the surveyor there. Because surveying is expensive, and the more you know, you're going to save yourself time and money. You'd fall in love with 3 boats, and 2 boats the surveyor didn't like. Boom, you're out a couple of grand right there. So anyway, so to start the process for buying a boat, and I'm sure you've already been watching videos and looking online, especially if you've been to yachtworld.com, which is a terrific resource for finding boats. Okay, it's probably the best way to find boats because they're all broker listed, but it's all the boats. You can go to Craigslist if you want, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, some of the key areas, and I have paper here, so I apologize. Some of the things I'm going to cover when trying to identify a boat: the style of the boat, size of the boat, age, the amenities in a boat, outfitting the boat, your budget, and where it is you're looking for boats and where you plan on taking the boat. Okay, so those are several things. Maybe I even listed them on here, okay, in the video. So anyway, I think, and this took me a while, okay, I have some sailing experience, but I've never been a boat owner. I've never shopped for a boat, never thought about it. Everything that encompasses that. In order to determine what kind of boat it is that you're looking for, you need to know how you're going to use the boat. Meaning, are you just going to be a coastal cruiser? Do you want to be an island hopper? Are you trying to be off the grid? Do you want to sail with speed? Do you want the most durable boat possible in case you hit a reef? I mean, there's a lot of different things to consider. From what I've seen, a lot of people out there just through the channels and through marinas, you're going to see a lot of people in these early to late 70s boats. One of the common consensus I've heard is stay away from the early 80s boats, and it has to do with the whole oil thing. And oil is used for making fiberglass, so they use less fiberglass then because of the cost, and the hulls aren't as thick and core and yada yada yada. So anyway, you do see a lot of people going in with older boats, which I call project boats because they are project boats. So if you're a newbie, start watching a lot of other channels and see what people are putting into their boats. Maybe one you watch is Sailing Uma, and you got to give those kids a lot of credit. They went and bought a really inexpensive boat. I think they said it was around $3,000. And then you saw the work that they put into it. And there's some other channels out there, Sailing Nervous. They've been stem to stern, they're rebuilding that boat, so God bless them. We didn't want to go through that process. But we also aren't looking for the most ultra-modern boat either that looks like a New York City apartment. No, we know we didn't want to put the time, energy, and money into a project boat and rebuild it stem to stern. Anyway, okay, so let's move forward. Again, assuming that you are looking to be liveaboards and cruisers, all right? First of all, I had to familiarize myself with the different types, styles of the boats, okay? Whether it be a sloop, which could also be a fractional rig, but it's the most common. You have a head sail and a mainsail, all right? 2 sails. And of course you can fly a spinnaker or a gennaker or asymmetrical or whatever, okay? But basically 2 sails. Then you have a cutter rigged, which would be the mainsail and the head sail plus a staysail in the middle. And a ketch. And ketches have the mizzen mast, okay, behind the cockpit. And then of course you could have a sloop or cutter rig and have a center cockpit, whereas most cockpits you see are aft in the stern. Center cockpits are more in the center, and that gives you a lot more aft berth space. So that's a different thing too. Anyway, so 3 basic styles of boats that most cruisers are looking for: the sloop, the cutter, and the ketch. Okay, so research those, see what works for you. Another thing is keel types and the draft of the boat. These are really important. Keels. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on keels. I'm not an expert. Basically what you're going to see is full keels versus fin keels. And then the fin keel could have a bulb ballast on it, or it could have, maybe it's a wing keel too. All right. Pros and cons to both. Do your research on those and see what works best for you. Fin keels tend to be more responsive in steering. A fin keel with a wing can be a real pain in the neck depending where you live. Down in Florida, there's lots of crab pots. So, when crab season comes around, as soon as they get caught on that wing keel, you're dragging pots. So if you had a full keel, you might not have that problem. Plus, it protects your prop a little bit more. And that has to do with rudder types too. So if you're really interested, study the keel types, study the rudder types. We were able to narrow down the boats that we looked at, or even considered. We were able to just throw some boats out, no matter how great they looked, is that we needed the sugar scoop transom. Now, not everybody needs that. We have 2 dogs, and we snorkel and we dive, and we wanted the ability to have tanks there and get in and out of the water easily. Okay, there's ways around that. There's side ladders. You can make a step out of a plank and some rope, and it goes off the side, and there's all different ways around it. Okay, but just for us, that was we knew that's what we wanted, and of course we looked at tons of boats, and as we got closer and closer, we just knew that's what we needed. So that really helped to eliminate boats. So through the process, you always want to not just find what you like, find out things that are going to eliminate other boats. Once you start getting out there and looking at boats, your head's going to spin. And I have a suggestion to keep your head from spinning as much as possible. And we'll get to that later. Okay, so we told you one of our deal breakers was the transom, which was great. Narrowed boats down. Another deal breaker for us was the draft of the boat. We live in Florida. Originally, we were on the East Coast. Everything's shallow on the East Coast. And marinas are shallow, too, even though they dredge. And come low tide through the ICW, it's low. And then if you're going down to Key West or to the Bahamas or whatever, you have shallow water out there. Now, a great channel was Seawolf, and they're not sailing anymore. And that was a great channel, and they had a great boat. Oh my God! And their draft was 7 foot, and they went everywhere. So you make accommodations for tide and charts and so on and so forth. For us, we decided we wanted it to be as easy as possible, and we wanted a shallow draft. And our boat is 4'3". We have no problem going anywhere, which is great. Okay, so when you look at boats and you see these different drafts and you've decided where you want to go and where you're going to live, especially if you're living aboard, maybe you've already scouted out the marinas that you want to be in. Find out what's their low tide, what's the channel, how long is the channel, how far do I need to go to open water, am I only going to be able to come in on high tides or whatever. I mean, there's a lot to figure out. Size of boats. Wow. If you watch Sailing La Vagabond, they're on a 43-footer, and that's kind of where we wanted to be. We were looking at boats 38, no smaller, to 43, and we saw lots of different boats. And then one day I was looking at a 40-footer, and it was a wreck. The broker I was with, he said, let's go take a look at this. And that was the Island Packet, and it was only a 32, but it was huge, and it had tons of storage. Well, also that day I was going to look at another 36. Again, I was dropping down to a 36. And next to that was this boat. So my point is, we thought we wanted 38 to 43. And then I started, the cost with anything over 36 foot is a big difference. You know, from bottom paint to slip costs. Everything's just much, much more expensive. Plus, and we'll talk about this later, is budget. I knew where I wanted to be budget-wise. And to get boats of that size in my budget, I was going to make a lot of sacrifices, and it would be possibly more of a project boat than I wanted. So anyway, size is a factor. Think of it as both comfort, sailability for your ability, and overall budget. So take any boat, call a marina, and ask them what the slip fee is, and find out that. If you're already checking out on bottom work and so on and so forth, you're just going to see there's a big budget difference. So size is very, very important. Not just to say I have a bigger boat and I have more storage space. Sometimes you got to be able to afford that storage space, I'll tell you. Okay, age of the boat. We already started that. We see a lot of people in the 70s, which is fine. Okay, there's great quaintness in those boats. They look like sailboats, and they're supposed to be at the islands. But also codes have changed, and the way the different types of plumbing and the tubing and the exhaust hoses and everything's changed. And you know, there's still copper in some of those boats, and the electrical system. And you know, over 40 years, people have played with the electrical system, and maybe they don't all have breakers and dedicated fuses and so on and so forth. If you're not an expert on the electrical panel, which I am not, if you're not an expert on plumbing, which I am not, and motors and all of this, it's a project boat. Let's say you find a 1973 Morgan Out Island. It's 41 foot, has the walk-through. It's great, right? Call your insurance first. Some boats, they just tell you to self-survey. You just write it up, this is what it is, and they don't ask for anything more than that. Others they want a survey on. I didn't come across that, which I thought was unusual, because if you watch Sailing Nervous, they couldn't leave the dock until certain things were done. They were considered a risk. So I'm sure it's different for every boat or state. I don't know. I'm not an insurance expert. Our boat's a 97. I had a great survey, but it didn't even matter. I called in, told them what it was, bada bing, bada boom, I had a price. Anyway, but before you pull the trigger on any boats, make sure you call around on insurance, because it's just another cost you don't think about. Style, age, size. Amenities. Amenities are easy enough. You're gonna walk in, you're gonna know what you like, what you don't like. You know, do you like the head? No. Or the sink, or a refrigerator, the berths, the settee area, tables, whatever. They're just amenities, okay? Everybody has a different preference on that. You know, is it an alcohol stove? Is it a propane stove? You know, how many burners? How steep are the companionway? I'm looking at mine, which made me think of it. How steep are the companionway stairs? Yada, yada, yada. How is the boat outfitted? That's kind of a big deal. When I talk about outfitting, I mean the navigation system, chart plotter, depth, speed, wind direction, radar, AIS, solar panels, wind generator, air conditioning, autopilot. Do you have a wind generated autopilot, whether it's a monitor or Cape Horn? Does it have a dinghy? Does it have dinghy davits? Does it have an outboard and outboard mount? Does it have a water maker? Does it have a life raft? You know, if you're a cruiser, that's a lot of stuff. Now, I've seen lots of boats that are being sold by cruisers that already have all that on it. But if the boat doesn't have it and you're looking to get it, now you're talking thousands of dollars to outfit your boat. So that's a consideration. I'm actually going to talk about location before we get to budget. Location. We're already in Florida. It's not like we lived in Tennessee and we decided we wanted to be cruisers or wherever, right? We're already in the sailing hub of the United States. I think it'd be really easy, right? No, it wasn't really easy. We went from Vero, all the towns in between, down to Miami, then to the West Coast, which is where we are now, several towns around there. And, you know, I looked at tens of boats, okay? I don't know, probably 30-some boats. Anyway. But we planned on being here anyway. So what if you live someplace else? And I see this a lot. People fly to Florida or drive to Florida to look for boats. Well, I hope you have it really well planned out because it's exhausting. All right, so take that into consideration. How am I going to achieve this? Oh, another thing on location. I started calling around to marinas before I even found a boat. I wanted to find out where we were going to live. And I wanted to be relatively close to where we were living in a condo, just because I knew the area. Could not. Okay, we live in Palm Beach County, Boynton Beach. And if you go north, about 40 minutes or so is Jupiter. And you go south is half an hour, depending on traffic, not even, is Fort Lauderdale. Well, in between there, no liveaboards, nothing. Okay, now there might be some exceptions that I don't know about, but as far as marinas that allow liveaboards, there were none. You could go to Jupiter and farther north, and you could go to Fort Lauderdale and then further south. And I didn't want to be in either one of those areas. So that's how we ended up on the West Coast. And that was a challenge too, because we really wanted to be in the Clearwater area, and there was only one that was grandfathered in. It was a municipal thing that they don't allow liveaboards. But anyway, that's another thing. Keep that in mind. If you want to be a liveaboard, make sure you know where there's a marina where you can do that. Budget's crazy, okay? Let me tell you what I can tell you about budgets. Whatever your purchase price budget is, add another 20% to it for whatever work may need to be. This is basic work. I'm not talking about project boats. I'm talking one that has a really good survey and it's ready to sail away. Still plan on another 20% for either things you didn't think of or just a bottom job plus adding some outfitted things, maybe having a mechanic come in and just give you a tutorial, walk you through the engine, which is what I did. I had a mechanic come in, we went through everything, we changed the filters and the fluid, so I knew how to do it, and it was worth it. All right, so just add another 20% because believe me, you'll spend it without a doubt. And then also don't forget, your taxes, your documentation costs, your state registration, Coast Guard registration. What we just went over is the things to think about before you even actually go step on a boat. Okay, and that just means taking the time and research and doing the research, looking at pictures, whatever, going to Yacht World and looking, but not going to the boats yet. Now you actually want to go see a boat. Whew. Go see a boat. All right. Well, do you want to start with Craigslist or Yacht World, broker or no broker? Craigslist is interesting. You have to be careful because some of the Craigslist ones are broker ones, and the ones that aren't will have very little in the listing. Oh, also remember, boats always look great in pictures until you go see them. Anyway, broker or not using a broker. If you're going to look at Craigslist boats, do as much research as possible beforehand. If you're going to look at a hunter and you know the year and whatnot, look them up. Go to cruising forums, and other boards, and read about them and look for reviews and things like that. Okay, I just picked Hunter arbitrarily. It could be a Pearson or Erickson and Allberg, whatever it may be. Do research on that year boat. Okay, you'll find a lot of information. Because the listing isn't going to say very much, and you want to know what it is that you're looking for. So Craigslist is a challenge. I wouldn't look at a Craigslist boat until I knew what I was looking at. All right, and the only way you're going to figure that out, especially if you're a newbie, is to look at boats. So it's sort of like, hey, I just graduated college, but I can't get a job because I don't have any experience, and I don't have any experience because I don't have a job. Same thing as looking at boats. Okay, brokers are not that bad. Some are just absolutely horrible. Yes, I'll give you that. But this is the theory that I came up with that I would tell somebody else to do after I've already gone through this. Find 3 or 4 boats that are close to what you want, but you really don't like the boat. You know you're not going to buy that boat regardless. Call the broker, set up a showing, and go look at the boats. Why would you go look at a boat that you have no intention of buying? Because you're not going to fall in love with it. Okay, you're not going to think about it the days before leading up to it and lose sleep about going to see the boat, and you're not going to be thinking, well, this could be the one. Go look at 3 or 4 boats you have no intentions of buying and go through the process. And use 3 or 4 different brokers. Okay, so you're going to accomplish 2 things. 1, you're going to learn how to look at a boat. And when you're done with that first boat and you're sitting down, you're going to be like, I don't know what was wrong with that boat because I don't even know what I looked at. And it goes by like that, and you forgot all the things that you thought you wanted to look at. It's really weird. You won't even remember that boat. Also, use it as an interview process for 3 or 4 different brokers. The broker that I had was great. Okay, he was a sailor. He had a real interest in what I was looking for. He dug around in the boat. He had unbelievable knowledge of each boat. He did a terrific job. So he taught me as we went along. And then I did research on my own and learned how to survey a boat on my own. But this is 30 boats later, okay? And like the first 10, I can't even tell you what I looked at because I didn't know what I was looking for. I had little tiny bits of information. But I learned how to look at chain plates. I learned how to look at the shrouds to see how tight, how loose, and the difference between them already being in the water and being on the hard. Boats that were on the hard, I learned how to look at the bottom. I learned how to look at through hulls. I learned how to look at the prop shafts, okay, and the cutlass bearing, and the rudder, and alignments, and wiggle room, and crazy stuff, okay? So the 2 things you're doing, you're going to learn how to look at a boat, use that 3 or 4 boats, go look at one, do some research, go look at another one, do some research, okay? And that'll help. Also, the broker thing. If you find a broker that you really like and has shown an interest in what you're trying to do, stick with that broker. Okay, you don't want to end up working with 10 or 12 brokers. If the guy is in the area that you're going to be in looking at boats, from that point on, every time you see something you really want to look at, call him and let him set it up. Okay? And I'll tell you why. The first 3 or 4 boats you go to look at are the brokers who have listed the boat. That means they work for the seller. Now you look at a boat that he has not listed, it's listed by somebody else. Now he's working for you. He is your broker. Okay? He is going to help you buy that boat. Now you got to trust the guy, so you got to go with your gut feeling, see what type of information he's giving you. You know what I'm talking about. And if he's really going to go to bat for you, he's going to say, look, here's a problem, there's a problem, this is a problem. He should also be running the comps for you. You know, boats, that same style year boat sold over the last 5 years. What was it listed for, and what did it sell for? You know, all you care about is what it's sold for, not what it's listed for. Anything that's listed with a broker is going to be 10% higher than it really needs to be, because they're trying to they tell the seller realistic negotiation is knocking 10% off. So, you know, there's a 10% rule right there. So, anyway, it's good to have a broker in your corner that is knowledgeable. All right, so that's it. You know, that's how to start the process. Style, size, age, amenities, outfitting, budget, location. Start with that. Do your research on the ones that you have been able to par down. And then pick 3 or 4 boats that you have no intentions of buying. Look at them. Be aware of what it is you think you may have missed. And find yourself a broker too. And then in the next episode, I'll talk about how to go through a self-survey. There's a great website. I'll point things out to you, and it'll lead you in other directions of doing more research about how a boat functions beyond whether you think it's pretty or not. All right, so we'll see you next episode. Thanks.